I was hoping we would get a lot more clarification on the Vancouver Canucks. I was watching the 32 Thoughts podcast today, which is the best podcast in my opinion. And we got a lot more clarification on a couple of different things. Now, I'm going to start off with the what I perceive to be the bigger news is the Brock Boeser news. So we got confirmation on exactly what the offer was. So we can get a bit more clarification. Like before, we just had that Brock Boeser wanted north of 8. And the whole time I was like, well, that's very reasonable. Elliot Friedman touched on the fact that, like, Brock Boeser, he thinks that he wants to stay in Vancouver. So it's not like he's certainly messing around with the Vancouver Canucks. But, I mean, at least that's good to hear. Now, he initially said that the Vancouver Canucks offered 5 times 8. So, now, it doesn't look like the Canucks are going for a max term, and it looks like he is actually okay with a 5-year deal. I'm a little bit surprised that he isn't or wasn't able to get a max term from the Vancouver Canucks, or at least a max term offer. But he said that the offer was 5 times 8, so $8 million. I think that's actually pretty fair. I actually think, from my perspective, that is a little fair. I can kind of understand now how the Canucks haven't re-signed him, because if it was just like a 8 or just a little bit north of 8, then that actually sounds pretty reasonable to me. Now, he actually said that he believes that 45 million will get it done. So 45 million will get it done. That's what he's saying. So that's a little bit different from 8. It technically is north of 8 on a 5-year contract, right? 45 divided by 5, that's about 9 million a year. So essentially the Vancouver Canucks on a 5-year contract want him at 8, and he wants somewhere about 9 million. So this is where it's getting a lot more interesting. I'm not going to lie, I actually kind of agree with the Canucks now. Now I have more clarification on that like why he wasn't signed, right? Because the whole time I was like, well, if it's just 8 or 8.25, I would probably just do that. If he wants 9, I personally wouldn't give him 9 either. That's why in all of my Brock Boeser videos, I was always prefacing it with the fact that, like, if this is just what he wants, I would probably meet those demands. I wouldn't pay him 9. Now, then the real question is where exactly is this going to go? That's the most interesting when it comes to Brock Boeser. But that is the new Brock Boeser news that we did get today. Now, there's a lot of Vancouver Canucks information in this podcast. So the second thing that he talked about is the Canucks and Pius Suter, are not close on a new contract. I find that a little bit unfortunate. I think that he's been really, really good for the Canucks. He's been like a bright spot for them this year. He has 59 games, 16 goals, and 12 assists for 28 points. And he's playing about 16 minutes and 34 seconds on average this season. That's actually pretty decent ice time. He's usually slotting into that third line center role according to Vancouver Canucks line combinations. So, again, I kind of understand from his perspective how he might not want to re-sign, at least right now, especially with knowing what UFA is going to be for him, right? Because you have to understand that a lot of these players are going to get paid a lot more than you think. Now, surprisingly, he only got about a 1.6 times 2 contract. But here's the thing. He's a centerman. He is going to be a UFA this year at the age of 29 years old. And he's going to UFA, right? So he is going to get a lot more than 1.6. I'm telling you, I've said this before, but centers are going to get overpaid like crazy. I think that Pius Suter has his he's not a perfect player by any means, but I'm going to be really interested to see what he gets in unrestricted free agency. Now, he may be actually asking an outrageous amount, so then maybe, we're seeing center positions. They're just, a lot of teams are just asking outrageous amounts, so whatever. Now, let's go on to JT Miller. There was an interesting comment in the podcast where Elliot Friedman said, the Vancouver Canucks have not been doing that good lately. So he was essentially alluding to the fact that essentially after the trade, the guts or the emotions around the room had changed with JT Miller being out. Maybe JT Miller actually was. Maybe they actually did need like a JT Miller type, like to get the guys going. We know JT Miller has a lot of, he's known for being an uppity guy to his teammates. He really gets on his teammates. And he's essentially, Elliot Friedman was alluding to the fact that the guts of the team has changed. The feeling around the team has changed, which I found a really, really, really interesting tidbit. So I'm really interested to see if the Vancouver Canucks even make the Stanley Cup playoffs. I'm not sure. I've been pretty consistent with my beliefs right now that I think that they will. Because again, it's just weird. They just seem like hellbent on not making the playoffs. Right now, for the 4th spot in the Pacific Division, Calgary and the Canucks are tied. 60 games played, 65 points. Tell me if you guys thought that would have happened before this season. I thought Vancouver was, and I still think they're a good franchise, but I'm a little bit surprised with that. Now, I wanted to also talk about Elias Pettersson. There was a comment on Elias Pettersson that really caught me in this podcast. He was talking about that. He says that essentially he doesn't believe that Elias Pettersson is going to get moved this season, which I find a little bit surprising because he has no trade protection this season. It's a little bit weird that they wouldn't look to move him this season. Maybe there are some barriers in the way, like they need to move a big cap hit or something like that. But this is really, really, really interesting to me because he said, depending on what happens this season, next season, and the off season, essentially, that Elias Pettersson possibly moving is going to be one of the biggest off season stories. Essentially, that's what he was alluding to. Really, really, really interesting because it's kind of weird to me because this seems like the type of season where he doesn't have any trade protection. So it kind of logically seems that you might want to move him right now, right? Like it seems just logical that you will move him when you have more chances to move him to different teams, right? Because as he has trade protection, he holds all the cards at that point. If you understand what I mean. So I just don't understand why they wouldn't look to trade him this season if they do want to trade him. I'm not saying that's a good thing because you're trading him at the lowest value that he has. So whatever, that's just my opinion. Anyways, lots of Vancouver Canucks news today in that podcast. Just wanted to make a quick video on it. I am going to leave this video here. If you could like, comment, and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it, guys. And make sure to have a great day. Goodbye, guys.